So a hearty good morning to everybody. I wanted to present today, in fact, the concept of my fourth book, which I've renamed because I've thought about it, and it's really about delighting our customers. So I call it Delighted Customer Strategy. And what I want to focus on in today's presentation is thriving in the digital deluge, because it's my observation as we move towards 2030 that our customer becomes digital savvy and will demand more of us as companies selling products and services in a digital realm. And so that's what I want to focus on. I've been around for 32 years. I actually love this industry. It wasn't called CRM when I started it. It wasn't even called Salesforce Automation when I started it. But I've rode the wave through a variety of different books and conferences and chairmanships. And I put the statistics up from Altimeter that a large portion of business executives really feel that this transformation to a digital way is priority number one. And you sit back and you ask yourself, why? How pervasive is this digital deluge? And the way I like to look at it is a fire hose. A fire hose that we are receiving information from our customers, from our competitors. We're receiving information in a variety of different platforms. And the question becomes, how do we use this information? What's relevant? How do we filter it? I'm not going to read the statistics, but I'll just tell you two that I always remember. There are more texts being sent daily than there are toothbrushes in the world. And there are more tweets being posted daily than there are books in the world. And we know that that's beginning to really change the way we are doing business. And we as savvy businesswomen and men have to ask ourselves, which of the insights that are being gathered digitally from what I call a digital fire hose is relevant to your business, which is relevant to your customers, and how are you going to utilize that information effectively? So how do you gather and then organize and then analyze and then exploit this deluge of data, given that your customers themselves are awash, not themselves knowing exactly how this whole thing is going to play out? And I sit back and I ask myself, as I've seen a lot of trends come and go, is this digital deluge here to stay? And what are the drivers behind that digital deluge? And I think there are two that are fairly important. The first one deals with the whole area of what I'd like to call the now customer. I've got two of them. I've got a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son, and they're absolutely convinced that Google is when the world started, and if you ever have a question, just ask Google. I've got a nephew, or niece actually, in New Jersey. I went to her 13th birthday just a couple of weeks ago, and she had the audacity to ask me what was my favorite app when I was her age. So their perspective is very different in life, and they look at the world differently than you and I, and some of you may. And the fact that 70% of the 16 to 18-year-olds are buying digitally and that the revolution is only beginning is a fairly good early indication that this is something that's not going away anytime soon. Driver number two, it's what most of you have in your pockets, or most of you have somewhere, in the form of a pocket PC, better known as the smartphone. 95% of all knowledge workers carry that phone, and again, I don't think that's going away anytime soon. It's rather shocking. We all didn't forecast just how quickly smartphones would penetrate both this part of the world and other parts of the world. But in this country, it's over 85% of all new phones are smartphones. So that gives you some indication of the criticality people are placing on this. So between the now generation and the smartphone, my observation is the digital fire hose does not diminish anytime soon. And the question then becomes, how do we thrive in this digital deluge? And I sit back as a thinker in this industry, and I ask these types of questions. Why is it that Borders lost their way in the digital deluge, and Amazon is thriving in the digital deluge? Why is it, for those of you that have, like a coffee drinkers, why is that Ile, one of our well-known companies that I know very well, why is that they're finding their way, still sending out mass emails to all customers, not targeting effectively, not knowing contextual relevant information at the right place at the right time for customers, whereas Coca-Cola has 20 million registered consumers and in 2015 decided that they would activate their CRM database and begin their digital roadmap, if you will, and are beginning to really make very, very big inroads on both loyalty, advocacy, and new customers. I ask myself, is there a recipe? Is there a recipe why the Amazons and the Cokes are winning and why Border lost and why Ely is losing? And I think there actually is, and I'd like to share that recipe with you. It consists of 3 simple ingredients. I'll go through them each one at a time. And we'll start with the big picture, because I'm a big picture guy. That's the only thing I really understand. I don't think you can create a customer process, whether it's sales pipeline management or first call resolution or market campaign management. I don't think you can create something unless you know where it fits into the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is where the business is heading. Whether you're in the manufacturing side, the service side, the IT side, where are we taking the business, and where does CRM and some of these tools fit in to support that direction? So the recipe for success, at least in my books, will start with the strategic component, and that's the delighted customer strategy. And for that, I'll share with you the picture. This is the new book that I'm writing, and this is the core of every good book, of every book that I know, and that is a diagram that you think about it a lot. You start to break it up into pieces, you write about it, you talk about it, you present about it, and that then becomes the core of a book. So I'll share with you kind of the inner guts of my new book, and I think it's a very important way to frame up how do we thrive in the digital deluge. So let's start on the bottom. Sridhar and Reju talked about CRM. And I must tell you, I don't know about you, but I was rather impressed. This is a company that has its act together, that's thought through well beyond a piece of CRM, and has thought through many, not only pieces within CRM, sales, marketing, customer service, but how that then integrates with social and finance and other parts of what I think they call the business operating system. And in that regard, what impressed me is the Zoho CRM Plus suite, where they've done, I think, a fairly nice job on an end-to-end customer engagement suite, where they're all fitting together, giving visibility and context to each customer interaction across different channels, regardless of whether you're in sales, marketing, or customer service function receiving that customer, and therefore it empowers the team with the tools they need to manage customer relationships. So for that, I say chapeau to the founders and the developers of Zoho. But in my books, CRM is one of the sources we use for data. What I think is critically important, I'll reinforce this multiple times in this morning's presentation, is the one in blue, and that's the holistic customer profile. Some people in the old days used to call it a 360-degree view of the customer. There's a variety of different terms, but what it talks about is the ability for you to really understand your customer. And what sources do you have to understand your customer? Well, I think you have the CRM data. That's certainly one of the sources we talked about. It could be sales pipeline data. It could be customer service incident management data. It could be marketing response data. And there's some very good data that we need to capture to understand that customer. There's also back office data, whether it be from your ERP systems, your point of sale systems, your loyalty systems. This is data that we know the customer bought or did something of significance. And we can take the traditional data along with the CRM data, and we're beginning to get a better picture of that customer. We're going to add a third bucket of data called third-party data, increasing source, whether it's more in the demographic or psychographic or lifestyle from the experience or the axioms of this world, or increasingly from third-party vendors that specialize in a particular area, the automotive area or the wine area or various types of hobbies and or professions that people are in. And the good news is, over the past decade, there's been a tremendous growth in the availability and the quality of that data and the ability to use different tool sets to integrate the traditional, the CRM, and the third-party data and to put it into a more holistic profile. There's one other tool that's on that bottom part of the screen called identity resolution. This is something that you just write it down and remember this. So right across the bay, I guess is what you would call it, are companies like LiveRamp and Oracle that are creating quite a storm in the area of identity resolution. And what is it? So let's take Bart as a buyer. I happen to enjoy old Jaguars. It's my hobby. I've got 3 very old Jaguars, and the Jaguar dealership knows me pretty well. I bought them there years ago, and I get them serviced, and they know, if I leased it, what my lease was, and they know an awful lot about me offline. Who is he? What cars does he drive? When does he service them, etc. But I'm not just a guy that likes to drive Jags. I like to talk about Jags. I like to get on social media sites and talk about, the coolest things in the Jaguar X class or in the whatever class it may be in. And I enjoy doing that, and I get on websites, Jaguars and competitive to Jaguars, and I look around and learn lots of things. But when I'm online, they don't know it's Barton Goldenberg. They know it's cookie number 1064. If I'm on my mobile ID, they know it's mobile ID 9032. But they don't know it's Barton Goldenberg because I'm not authenticated. I'm anonymous at that point. If we're going to sincerely understand our customers and get a true holistic profile of our customers, how in the world can we expect to do that if we don't integrate my offline behavior with my online behavior to have a full and complete holistic profile of Barton? Are you with me so far in this? And that's what identity resolution is. It's a new technology that integrates offline and online data within tremendously, careful privacy laws and rules and regulations. But what it does do is it brings together offline and online data. And as we move increasingly into the digital era, it's foolish to even consider a holistic customer profile that is void of the tremendous and increasing amount of digital footprint that each and every customer displays. So that kind of concludes the bottom piece of the equation. And really what I'm talking about in the picture is the holistic profile. Absolutely critical. I was at a session in Boston, Massachusetts last week with one of the key principals of Forrester, one of the analysts. And the number one challenge for CRM, according to Forrester's study of 2016, is the complete holistic view of the customer information and data. So this is, something I've written about since 1986. It hasn't gone away, but I will tell you, and I'll reinforce it later on, you can't create a successful CRM system. You can't create an effective delighted customer strategy if your customer profile is not well thought through and integrating both online and offline data coming from the variety of sources, whether it's traditional, CRM, and or third party. So that's kind of a baseline of we can build our house once we have our holistic profile in place. Sitting on top of the profile is our data analytics platform, and I also will include a listening platform. The data analytics platform, and there's tremendous amount of those that are available today, allows us to sort and stack and segment and target our customers in ways that we couldn't do before. That allows us to message to customers, to create unique products and services, etc., so that we can do a better job in reaching our customers. The listening device, I'll get back to that in a minute, comes from the channels of distribution that we use. And it would be my humble observation that our job as businessmen and women is not just to sell products and services, but is to listen very carefully to our customers, because they will tell us what type of products and service they want to buy. They will tell us how they want to buy them. They will tell us where they want to buy them. They will tell us how much they're willing to pay for them, because they're more savvy than they ever were before. So our job, if you will, is not only to understand the data that sits in the holistic profile and do our data analytics to be able to segment and target and market more effectively, but it's also to use that data, and particularly data coming in from the channels of engagement that I'm going to talk about, to learn more about our customer, to be able to service, sell, and market more effectively. So let's go to those channels. I've identified what I call 4 customer engagement channels. They're not all digital. One of them is your good old traditional media channel, face-to-face meetings, telephone calls, direct mail, advertising, offline surveys, all of these types of things that are very, very important and will continue to be important as we move forward in the future. And if we're clever and we do our call reports or our trip reports, or we take the survey results, we bring them down into our profile and attach it to the customer and use our data analytics, well, maybe we can come out with better targeted phone calls, more relevant surveys, better face-to-face meetings where we are talking a language that makes more sense to that customer. The second customer engagement channel is that of social media. Most people think of it as the public social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I create and strategize these public communities quite a bit, but I think the more powerful community are what are called private or branded or invitation-only communities, where you invite your customers and or prospects in a closed environment where you can manage the dialogue, you own the data, and you can then begin to really utilize that to better understand your customers. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of those a little bit later on in the presentation. But here's what I do know. If we listen carefully to our communities and we harvest the social insight coming from those communities, what people say, and we then take that information and bring it down into our holistic profile and put the data analytic layer on top, we can come back out with better threads, with better forums, with better contests, with better discussion groups inside our communities. So you see how we're beginning to use the kind of to and from, which is why these arrows show two different ways. They come down into the profile and back up in our customer engagement channels. The third channel is that of e-commerce. And by the way, as we move from your left to right, we're becoming increasingly digital. This is very important. The e-commerce channel is almost all digital. These are the people that are coming on the website. These are the people that are using the portals. These are people that are using, the old traditional shopping cart. These are people that are using search. These are next best offer. This is all being done in the e-commerce way. And every time the digital customer on an e-commerce site does something, we can monitor, measure, gather, and analyze it. And if we do that cleverly and bring that information down into our profile by that individual, and we listen to what they did, we can then use our data analytics to come up with a better website, a better portal, a more relevant search, a more capability of next best offer, etc. And the last channel becomes a little bit further out, if you will, the emerging technologies. Most of us know this as a mobile app. That's very, very important. But so too are some of the other emerging apps, whether it's the wearables that many of us are wearing on our wrists, whether it's some of my favorites, the Internet of Things for the B2B world, whether it's the virtual reality, and more important, augmented reality that is really an incredible technology that will change the way we sell and market in the future, or whether it is personalized television or personalized videos, addressable television. There's a whole bunch of new technology that are in the emerging in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Every one of them allows a company that's utilizing them to know a whole lot more about their digital customer, when they used it, what's their location when they used it, how often did they use it, etc. And all of these are examples, once again, if we listen carefully, to learn more about the customer, put it down into the holistic customer profile, and come back out with more relevant mobile apps, more relevant wearable products, more relevant Internet of Thing app sensors, etc. So I'm painting a bit of a message that says, if we're clever, we are building a solid base of our holistic profile based on our traditional or more transactional data, ERP, POS, loyalty, our CRM data, and our third-party data. We're linking that data together with some of the great new tools into a profile, but long before we call it a very holistic profile, we're clever enough to understand offline is not good enough. We must integrate online and offline, and therefore the tools like identity resolution become very, very critical in that mix. We then take that data, we leverage it using our data analytics tools to better segment and target and understand our customers. And then we come up through our 4 customer engagement channels: traditional, social, e-commerce, and emerging technology, with the best products and services we think make sense. And then we do a very good job listening to customer feedback that will tell us how we should adjust our products and services, where, when, at what price, how often, etc., so we can be more in line with the digital now customers' needs. There's one other point, and by the way, if we do that correctly, it's my observation with all of our customers that acquisition and retention and growth will happen. And that's the goal we're shooting for. The one other point I want to mention in this is you'll see the little red lines between these engagement channels. This is very important. We can learn across digital channels, and that's something that is beginning to be understood by vendors and thinkers alike. If I learn something in the emerging technology channel from a mobile app, that might impact how I'm going to offer my social media forum tomorrow. Or if I learn something in the social media channel, that might impact what I'm going to offer on my search engine tomorrow. So these channels are integrated, and our job then is to figure out in a holistic profile, how do we both listen, but listen across the channels so we can drive good customer engagement, retention, growth, etc. And that's the first step in the 3-step recipe for a delighted, thriving in the digital deluge. Now, I did one thing today that I don't always do, but I wanted to talk a little more about CRM's role in a delighted customer strategy. And I'm doing that in part because we're at a CRM conference. It's a little bit more than a CRM conference, as we learned this morning. CRM is really important. Getting it right is critical. Quite frankly, this doesn't work unless CRM is in place and rocking. Because CRM, as the arrows show, helps to integrate transactional data and third-party data. You can put it in the CRM database, you can put it in a warehouse, you can put it in a lake, but the bottom line is CRM data is critical and could even be the storage tank for relevant data. CRM definitely impacts identity resolution because we're going to leverage that CRM data, which tends to be offline today, but will be increasingly online tomorrow. CRM is critical in developing the profile. It's critical in helping us to sort and stack and use our data analytics. CRM is critical in meeting with customers and getting trip reports and knowing what they like and don't like. It's critical in listening to what customers are saying on public and private communities. CRM is critical on the e-commerce front for leveraging the data and utilizing it effectively, etc. So CRM, and not because I've been in the industry 32 years, I really believe it's very, very critical. So let's make sure we're all on the same page. CRM. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they think that you can take CRM technology, slap it in the organization, and magic happens, right? We get better sales, all of a sudden customers are satisfied, market campaigns start hitting their numbers, magic happens. There's just nothing further from the truth. As anybody that's done CRM, and particularly hands that have raised 10, 20 years of CRM, you know, CRM is not a technology. Technology is a piece of CRM, but CRM is a business mentality. It's the way you think. It's the way you think about your customers. It's a business approach. It says, I'm not so clever. I've made good products. I'm IBM. I've made good products for 100 years, but the world's changing. I'm not so clever. I'm not as clever as I used to be, so I'm going to listen a whole lot more. A business approach that says we're going to put into place good customer-facing business processes, sales processes, marketing processes, customer service processes. There's 3 types of processes. Outbound, from me to the customer, or you to the customer. How do you want them to do business with you? Sales, marketing, customer service. There's inbound processes. How does the customer want to do business with you in sales, marketing, and customer service? And then there's internal processes. How do you in sales, marketing, service talk with each other to make sure you're taking great loving care of the customer? And any company worth its beans that's going to start out on a CRM today, first generation or fifth generation or 10th generation, knows that if your processes are not reasonable and you apply technology, you make something bad worse quicker, and that's plain old silly. So we make sure the processes are reasonable. I'm careful on that word reasonable. They don't have to be perfect. Reasonable, 80%. And every 6 months improve your processes. That's a good rule of thumb. And when we get the processes that are reasonable, then we're going to spend a whole lot of time, money, and effort to train people inside the company and our customers and our distributors how to use those processes effectively. I mean, nobody was born to be a sales pipeline management genius or a first call resolution genius, right? That's something that we need to be trained on. And it always surprises me how few people and companies understand it's not about the process, it's about the utilization of the process from people that want to use it. Now, if we have good customer-facing processes in place, and we've trained our people with time, money, and effort so they understand the value and the importance of the process, then and only then could we ever consider using the technology tool, the CRM software, as the vehicle that will drive efficiency into the processes that our people are ready to use? And that brings me to the very well-known people process technology paradigm. I've written about this for more than 3 decades at this point. 80% of the success of CRM has nothing to do with technology. In fact, when we do an assessment with a company, they were convinced it was a technology problem, why there wasn't high user adoption. 80% has to do with the people and process, or the processes that your customers are happy to use, that you feel comfortable with, that people are using effectively. Have you taken the time and effort to train the customers and the internal personnel and the partners to utilize the process effectively? So that's the paradigm where, and it's not to suggest that technology is not important. Of course it's important. And you're going to spend a lot of money on the technology. But that's not what makes CRM work. What makes CRM work, I go back to the definition, is a mentality that says, I know I got to put in good customer-facing processes. I know I got to spend a boatload of money training people and educating them on the utilization of the process and why it's in their best interest to do so. And only then could I use the tool to drive efficiency into the process for people that have bought into those processes. And you're doing that to maximize relationships with all customers. So who are your customers? Well, they could be distributors, they could be retailers, they could be end users, they could be suppliers. They're all your customers, because if you don't have that holistic profile of the different pieces of the distribution channel, both north and south of who you are, wherever you are in the channel, how can you be effective in understanding customers and delivering the right products and services? I don't know any way to do that. That's the first part of the definition. Second part of the definition talks about a seamless, a comprehensive approach, meaning it's not to do in 2017, it disappears in 2018. Our best customers have been doing CRM, I don't know, 20 years, something like that, 15, 20 years now. Maybe it wasn't CRM at the beginning, it sure is CRM now. But what they've understood is there's a tool that this is where the profile comes in. We use that, the customer profile, the holistic customer profile, as the tool that provides that seamless collaboration between different people that touch the customer. So now I introduce the customer profile. And the way I like to look at it is a daisy. You put the customer in the center of the daisy, and then you have petals of information that are relevant about that customer. This is nothing more than a schema. It's an example, but we certainly want to know how to get in touch with the customers and any alerts. What was our last activity? What product have they purchased? What are they worth to us or not worth to us? Sales opportunities, any outstanding quotes, any customer service issues, historic or current, any product ideas they've given to us, any marketing things, and all that new digital insight that's coming from the internet. And we use that because then if a customer calls sales or marketing or customer service and we all use the same profile, we're in a position to say, oh, hello, Mrs. Smith. I'm not the service person. I understand you called in yesterday. Let me give you a warm transfer to my colleague in service, right? Instead of, oh, look, lady, you've called the sales department. You got the wrong department. So this is just a tool that I think is very, very important in allowing us to be successful in CRM. The last the piece of the definition talks about CRM increasingly leveraging both digital tools, including both the internet and social media. And I did write this definition in 1991, if I remember correctly. I've only changed the very last piece of it, and I've added the word digital tools, and at some point I think I added social media. But the key point is, how could we possibly manage a relationship with a customer if we're not digitally capable of connecting with them? So that's kind of the briefing on CRM, and I want to bring it back to, and by the way, behind that, of course, is the now customer. And I'm very impressed with our generation, baby boomers and below, in their desire and enthusiasm to become digital. And I think it's marvelous, and I think we have to really grab it and ride with it and enjoy it while we can. And it means some hard work, but that's part of what we have to do. So here's my closing slide on this little primer. As I've already alluded to, for delighted customer strategy, you can't get there without a rock-solid CRM. And as I've alluded to again in this slide, it's at the core of every component inside that pretty little picture of delighted strategy. Therefore, it's imperative that your existing CRM be in place. It's imperative that it be optimized. And if it's not, that's okay. But now is the time to enhance it, to make sure that you can accelerate your own digital transformation and be ready for the year 2030. Okay, that's the CRM piece, and I put that on there, remember, because I wanted to talk a little bit about delighted customer strategy. That was the strategic box I looked at. And once we kind of get that together and understand the importance of CRM, now we're ready to move into the second ingredient, which is not a strategic ingredient, it's a tactical ingredient in this thriving in the digital deluge. So that step, if you will, in the recipe is a 5-step, I think it's 5, closed-loop CRM approach. And let me share that with you. So the first area is we have products and services that we distribute through existing channels. Some companies might use digital channels. Some companies use, stores. Some companies might use websites. It depends on how you distribute, but you are who you are today. We start somewhere, and there's nothing wrong with where you start. Now, the question, of course, is what channels? Well, you could go back to the delighted customer strategy and say, well, it could be traditional or social or e-commerce and emerging technologies. That's a valid way to look at what channels you're in and to kind of mentally check how you're doing. I'll give you a different way of looking at it. I'm working on this with a couple of our more advanced customers, and that is maturity scale of channels. So this is high maturity, and this is low maturity. It's anti-intuitive. And this is the year 2020 to the year 2025. So at this point in time, we have a fairly high maturity on what might be traditional direct mail, display ads, that's all kind of mature in the marketplace. That's a channel you probably use, and if you don't, you might want to use, etc. We come a little bit more into the lower side of the maturity, and we have the email, websites, social, search, video. Companies are in 2015 using it fairly well, but there are some companies that still have not mastered that channel. As we bump up the next 5 years, we come into something more that's more like television and premiere content. You've seen the HBOs or the Netflix or Major League Baseball. These are all individual channels that really have a very big potential. Not so mature right now in terms of people being able to use them, but rest assured they're neither going away, and they will become more pervasive in how you market and sell, regardless if you're in the B2B side, the B2C side, or B2B2C would be my observation. And the last bit is kind of coming in the next 10 years, something like that. Internet of Things, everybody's familiar with that. Sensors, particularly on the B2B side. Out of home, these are very important things. They can be digital bulletin boards or advertisements that are on in stores or on the highway that are targeted to specific individuals based on their behavior, whether it be beacons inside the Macy's stores or whether it be the demographic, people that are traveling to the beach and are looking at a particular board up on the highway. Or it could also be, the in-store kiosks that are measuring who's in the store and what do we know about them. So this and just another way to look at channels. Your choice. I think this is simple. I think this is potentially more relevant as we become digital. But the bottom line is you start in some approach to your channel distribution strategy. Now, why do you have a distribution strategy? 2 reasons. To sell and your services and products, and to listen to your customers giving you feedback. So what do we do with all this feedback? Which brings me to the second piece of the closed-loop CRM, and that is a structured approach to gathering relevant data. Now, there's no magic bullet here, but I will tell you there's been tremendous strides and advancement over the past 5 to 10 years in this area. Now, I could give you a simple formula, if you want to call it this, but I'd rather tell you a couple of stories. The simple formula, by the way, is gather digital, now listen carefully, and non-digital information, right? Offline, online about your customer. Spend the time to analyze it. There's all kinds of analytics tools. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. And the key thing you want to remember is deriving actionable insight. Marriott Corporation is a customer of mine for many years, and they're just focused not on decision-making, but actionable decision-making. Can we use that data to do something to the Ritz-Carlton customer or to the Fairfield Inn customer that will allow them to feel more welcome the next time they come to Ritz-Carlton or Fairfield Inn? But I'm going to tell you a couple of stories because I think a lot of people feel that when gathering data, you have to boil the ocean, and I'm really against that. And in fact, nor did Ritz-Carlton. It's the story of a newlywed couple that were going on their honeymoon, and they went to Las Vegas, the Ritz-Carlton in Las Vegas. And this is a true story. I know it very well. So they arrived to Las Vegas. They had never been to Las Vegas. I think they were from Florida, if my memory serves me well. They ended up in the airport in Las Vegas. They were overwhelmed, slot machines in an airport, and they went to the hotel, and they checked into the Ritz-Carlton, and it was a lovely event, and they went upstairs, and they got to their room, and it was a beautiful room. It had beautiful furniture, and it had, very nice wood paneling, the traditional Ritz-Carlton. And the bride tweeted out to her friends that, this is very nice. We arrived safely, and well, we're at the Ritz-Carlton. It's not exactly what I was expecting, but it's okay. I mean, I'm with my hubby, and so it's going to be a good honeymoon. Well, that was minute 1 when the tweet went out. Minute 4, Marriott, which does a tremendous job at monitoring social media communities, including Twitter, observed this observation. And in minute 5, it was to the front desk of the Ritz-Carlton in Las Vegas, and it said, you got a problem in suite, 505. And the manager looked at it, huddled around. They thought, this is a newlywed couple, never been to Las Vegas. We put them in their grandfather's room. Maybe they want that room that overlooks the strip with glass walls and a jacuzzi. Maybe that's a more appropriate place. Why don't we move them? So they all said, yep, minute 6.5, 7, whatever it was. They're up on the elevator. They knocked on the door, and they said, we've been sitting downstairs thinking about it. You guys are newlyweds. We got this glass-walled room, overlooks the strip, jacuzzi. We think it would be better. Would you mind if we moved you? Well, they said, no, that'd be great. Thank you very much. And they moved them, and a minute later, this is when less than 10 minutes after the whole thing started, the bride tweets out a second time. She says, you're not going to believe what just happened. It's like they read my mind. They've moved us to a new room. Ritz-Carlton rocks. Okay? Simple use of data, actioning it, making a difference in somebody's life. On the B2B side, I'll give you an example for those that are in B2B. ExxonMobil's a customer of ours for 29 years. One of the world's best-run companies, a tremendous company. Now, they're very traditional. They're very strict in how they do things. They're very careful in how they do things. They've been around for a long time. They've got outstanding products, and they're not about to rock the boat easily. So I've been bugging them for probably 5, maybe more, 10 years on the growing importance of digital. And each time they'd say, thank you, Bart, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting. Well, about 4 years ago, one of the senior executives said to me, Bart, let's go for lunch. And we talked about the importance of, if ExxonMobil, and I'm on the lubrication side of the house, they're the #1 lubrication company in the world. If they're leaders in technology of lubricants, so Mobil 1 is to your automobile, as SHC is to the industrial sector. If you're #1 in the world and you're technical premium, then you got to be on top of your game in terms of how you're working with customers. So I said we got to create a social media community and allow and listen to our customers. And they actually bought this idea finally. And we were going to do it on Facebook, but you can't put Facebook in China, and because of the growing importance of the business in China, a public community was out for ExxonMobil. So we built a private community. It's called the Mobile SHC Club. And what they do is, and I happen to know it very well, we thought there were going to be about, we thought maybe initially 500 customers from around the world. Today there's about 2,400 customers around the world, lubrication engineers. No engineers in this room? Okay, we got a few. My son is studying as an engineer, and I have to tell you, some of the most boring people in the world are engineers, and nothing personal, including my son. But the ExxonMobil people decided, nope, we're not boring. We're right on top of our game. And today it's very interesting. It's in 5 languages. I can be in China typing in a question about foaming lubricants in my industrial refrigerator machinery. I type it in Chinese. It comes out in Russian in Russia. I type my Russian response and it comes out in German in Germany. I type my German response and it comes out in Spanish in Mexico. And I type my Spanish response and it comes out in English in North America. Now, I'm just going to tell you, what we do is we listen to what goes on in the community. And it's amazing how many ideas come out of that community because it's a private community. That means the rules of the road are, when you sign in and join the community, what you say can be used as a vehicle to help ExxonMobil sell, market, and develop products better. And you have to agree to that. They can use this thinking. So I've got the approval, and now I listen, and I take these wonderful ideas that come out, I send them right down into my CRM. They go out to the sales force in a matter of minutes, hours at most, and we have the leads that come right out to the sales force. So again, gathering data from our channel, in this case the social media channel, actioning it to drive happier customers and ultimately more sales. That's the second piece, if you will, in closed-loop CRM. Now, all that data has to go somewhere, and it comes as no surprise. It's going in the holistic customer profile. So we're back to that. I'm beginning to sound repetitive. But this is the vision that I always think about. How clearly do you really know your customers? We all say we're customer-centric. We're customer-focused. We love our customers. But how much do you really know about your customer? Assume that this is the focus of your customer, the young lady, which is purposely out of focus, and you're trying to market and sell to that person. Can you do that effectively? And the answer is, of course you can't. Or if the focus is blurry, doesn't it make sense to bring it into sharp contrast? Wouldn't it be nice if your CRM job started daily with a full picture of every customer, their entire history, their wants and their needs, and you could then begin to really create the right products and services, distribute them through the right channels, etc. And that's my vision for what is the profile. It's the same picture, same concept. This is for Beneteau Boats. They make sailboats, they make motorboats, they have dealers. That's part of one of the profiles, a dealer. The other type of profile is a boat owner, a sail owner like myself or some of you. And so they've got an awful lot of information, including the digital insight. That's how you use the profile that I've already alluded to. Now the profile's become, I've already talked about this, it's become complex in that the digital piece has become more important. So this is the Jaguar story. We work with several of our larger customers on this online and offline integration through identity resolution, because this is what they're looking for. Have access to relevant data tied to an individual, all data offline and online. The offline is in the black, the online is in the green, and the challenge to BMW, the challenge to Jaguar, the challenge to Ford is all the same. Do we really understand Bart Goldenberg's behavior? So the profile, very, very important. Next step, if you will, in the closed-loop CRM is now that data analytics layer that I talked about. And there's all kinds of reasons people will tell you data analytics, well, I'm not sure we're ready for it. It's complicated. You have to be a scientist. And, You can keep saying that, well, here's some, I took some from Forrester. We just can't get an omni-channel view of our consumers, or 46% they lack the ability to integrate digital and offline. 44% there's too much data, too many sources. 38% we don't have the technology to manage it. There's all kinds of reasons why data analytics is difficult, but let me put a stake in the ground. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the greatest companies in the world. There's no shortage of data analytics tools. There's no shortage of great data analytics, and boy, does it work. I remember working with Giorgio Armani. I'll tell you the story a little bit later on. But here's a guy who sells 51% of his suits, of his clothing is sold to men in this country, 49% to women. And there's a group of $1 million buyers of Giorgio Armani. Let's take that piece out for a minute, and let's look at their top buyers, and we'll try to understand their behavior. So we looked at the behavior and, what they buy and when they buy and how often they buy. Are they there's a certain group of buyers that buy before the fashion is announced. There's a certain group that buy when the fashion is announced, and a certain group that say, I'll see if the fashion worked and buy after it's announced. So who are these people and how do they buy? And then we built the lookalike models. A lookalike model is nothing more than we have a general understanding of the buyer profile of a customer group. Let's see if there are other customer group segments that look like that top buying segment, but we don't market to them in the same way, and that's just what we did. We built lookalike models, and we were rocking with sales, etc. So I don't buy the argument that data is complicated, data analytics is complicated. For what it's worth, the New England Patriots moved over to a data analytics-driven model for their game. I think you know where they stand in the league at this point in time. Okay, so this is the challenge. 72% and this was a survey done, in fact, out on the West Coast, of buyers agree or strongly agree that I appreciate vendors who contact me with relevant and contextual information. Find me, know me, delight me. That's, the digital now customer. And if we think about it, that's, intellectually right, but this is a very big challenge. It's a big challenge because it means that if we're really obsessed with customers and being contextual, as we need to know the customer at every touch point they have with our company, or for that matter, with our competitors. And that implies, and this is the challenge, tying together AI's ability to look at contextual relevance and respond accordingly. But the challenge, I think, is a little more difficult than just AI. We got to serve up contextual information. That is, information about our products and services, the value add, the benefit, whatever, to the right person at the right time, their way, the way they want to be served up, not my way or your way. And here comes the kicker, during their buyer window. So if I'm serving up relevant information their way and I'm not in their buyer window, they don't hear it. But if their window is open and they're looking for the research and so forth, then they are going to hear it. Now, what we know is that 80% of customers buy products, have already made the decision what product to buy long before they ever contact the company, whether it's through research on the internet, through social media, etc. So think about it. If you're not there during that research, during that social media process, and your competitor is, who gets the order? But how do we make sure we're contextually relevant, as it says, knowing the customer at each touch point? Now, it's not like I haven't thought about this. In fact, I've thought an awful lot about this. In the mortgage business, it's pretty easy. I can do the demographic, overlay models that say when you hit 27 or something, or 22, whatever the average age of marriage is in your community, I can figure out when you're likely to buy a home. I can monitor your behavior. If I see you 3 times on the internet looking at a mortgage company option, I got a pretty good indication you're in the buying mode. That's an easy one. But a lot of the other ones are not easy. And if you can help me with this, what I do know is that if you're not contextually relevant, then you're passing the wrong messages, or not necessarily the right messages, to the right customer in their buyer window, their way and not yours. But let's assume for a minute we are contextually relevant. Then the question, of course, is where do we put that information? And we just close the circle in the appropriate distribution channel that your customer happens to be in. And if that's one of the ones that you've worked on today and you're okay, that's fine. But if it's in a channel you're not in, remember the little graphs that I showed you, that's probably a channel you ought to be in. Recipe number 2 in a 3-step recipe to get us to success in thriving in the digital deluge and delighting our customers. So we've looked at the big picture, strategic, delighted customer strategy. We've seen how CRM plays a critical role in allowing that to happen. We've looked at ingredient number 2, the tactical closed-loop marketing, where we pick the channels. We do a good job listening and gathering the data. We put inside the profile, we do our data analytics, we come up with contextually relevant information and put it down the channel of choice of our customers. Third step. These are all the things that are going to bite you. This is the bit of the challenges in making a delighted customer strategy work or in thriving in the digital deluge. And it goes back to the people, process, and technology paradigm. And I want to give you a couple of examples. I actually want to use the people one because it's, I think, the biggest and the most interesting, and it always seems to bite you in the backside when you least expect it. So let me give you a couple of examples about challenges in thriving in the digital deluge. So I'm going to go back to our friends at Giorgio Armani, and the question I'm going to raise is your executive team ready to listen to customers? And you know, I have many stories. I have the one story of Phil Knight, was the ex-chairman of Nike. We were up at Beaverton, Oregon, there's a sports bar on campus. We had just done some research. It showed that the Nike wholesalers and you know, like the Foot Locker or whatever is the relevant sports stores in your part of the world, they were really unhappy with the way Nike would ship tops and bottoms that didn't always match, and they didn't really care because they were going for the best customers, and some of the other customers, you know, didn't get the service, and they got rated 17 out of 17. That's the worst in the wholesale distribution. And we presented this information to Phil Knight and the executive team, and we're at the sports bar having a beer, and I will never forget, he slams his hand down on the desk. The beer's kind of jumped up a bit, and he said, "Over my dead body is a customer going to tell me how I'm going to manage this business." Now, he had to hit a $13 billion ceiling at the time, and let me tell you that was the beginning of some dramatic change inside Nike, because today they really have made a big change in how they handle customers. But, you know, at that time, Phil Knight was not ready to listen. Giorgio Armani was a similar event. The story is he believes that men and women are just creatures of beauty, and that a nice suit or a pretty dress or whatever will make you just shine, you know, ravi, as they say in French, be enlightened. And so that's how he dealt with his customers. If you wanted to learn about his suits, he would put it on a very large, not standard size paper, but on a very beautiful catalog or a one-off, and it was gold embossed around the outside. It cost him $28, I remember, for each one of these. And it'd send it to you and say, you know, "Dear Bart, you know, Mario the tailor is coming in town next week to the New York store. We're inviting you. You know, you look beautiful in this suit. Come up and visit Mario." And he'd do the same thing for the women until we had a big problem. So this was 2011, if my memory serves me well. And he said, "We don't do email in this company. We meet our customers. We send out beautiful embossed catalogs and one-off, you know, gold embossed papers." And everybody's saying, "Giorgio, it's not exactly the world works." He'd say, "Listen, people are beautiful. That's how this company works." Until a woman it was in Hollywood, California, right here, south of here, and she went on vacation for a couple of weeks, and Giorgio Armani delivered a gorgeous, beautiful brochure, multi-page catalog, and it was too big to fit in the mail, so UPS had to deliver it, and they rang on her doorbell, and she didn't answer. She was on vacation. They put one of those stickers, you know, "UPS has been here, we'll come back in 3 days." And he came back in 3 days, knocked on the door, another sticker on the door. And by the time she got home, there were 4 stickers on her door, and she went irate. She called up Armani and said, "What are you doing? This is an announcement that I'm not home. They could break into my home. Get real, Armani. Get modern." Armani got a little bit shook by this story. And then there was the second story. It was of a woman who wrote in, I think she was from New York, if I remember. She said, "Listen, can't you use my iPhone? Every time that brochure comes to my house, my husband, my kids, they all say, 'Oh, here you go again, Mom, spending the family money. Can't you just put it on my iPhone and keep it quiet?'" And Armani got a little bit nervous from these 2 incidences, and that's when he started to listen. But you have to ask yourself, is your executive ready to listen? Another story on the people side, planning for executive skepticism. So the company's Kraft Foods. Now, this is the food service side of the business that sells to hotels and universities and cafeterias. It's the food service side. And I'll never forget it. It was a wonderful story. The guy's name is Jim Rowe. Now, Kraft is now Heinz Kraft, so all these players disappeared with the merger. But Jim Rowe was a wonderful guy, senior vice president of sales for all of North America. And we did a data analysis of where they were underperforming and overperforming and why in the southeast region of America. I remember from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Florida or something like this. And we presented it to him and told him which chains he should be penetrating, which customers he should not be calling on, which he should be calling on. And he was just totally amazed by this. And he's thinking, wow, this is really good stuff. And we're like really happy. And so we say to him, so when are you going to show it to Fred? Fred Pagalia was the president of Kraft Food. And he said, I'm not going to. We said, what do you mean you're not going to? He said, if I showed this data to Fred, Fred would sit me down and grill my ass and say to me, you see, for 5 years I've been telling you you've been selling to the wrong people in the wrong channels, and now I have the proof. So prepare for executive skepticism as well. There's another one on the people side, and this is very important. Again, I've given you 3 examples of that 50% people bubble, and that's the needed skills to pull off a delighted customer strategy to thrive in the digital deluge. It would be my observation that it's not, you need a CRM and a marketing and salespeople that are kind of half creative and half technically savvy. What do I mean by that? The creative CRM person is going to look after, how do I get more real-time, now listen carefully, online and offline data, right? Coming from brand loyal customers who, as I've alluded to earlier on, are very sensitive to data privacy. But the technical CRM person has to take that data, harness that online and offline data coming from these sources, and use these new tools to make smarter, actionable decisions that I talked about. And the problem is in our MBA schools and in our universities and in the workforce, it's very hard to get that person who's evenly split that's capable of doing both. So what we're finding in the market is it looks more like this. We have the CRM, whether it's the marketers or the sales or service, that are kind of doing the more creative stuff, and we have the technical side that's still doing more of the data analytics stuff, but we are collaborating more effectively. And so think collaboration between the two sides. 2 other small problems, and I'll bring it to a close, or 2 other challenges. So on the process side, again, 30% of the success. It should come as no surprise that it's very important that you have optimal sales and marketing customer service processes that delight your customers at every point. Let me give you a picture of what marketers face today when they try to decide what channel they should use to promote their products and services. So this is called, this is a picture, it's referred to as the MarTech picture. And that's the marketer sit in the middle of the picture, and they can send it out via video or via mobile. They can sell it out by addressable TV. They can use the search criteria. They can use media platforms, Facebook and all that. There's 3,500 platforms that a marketer now has to utilize to get the marketing message out. What platform do I use? And how do I use it? And who has the right to use it? And how do I make sure it's integrated to other platforms? And guess what all that is? That's a business process. And if you haven't thought that through when you go to use one of these platforms, this one right here, and it doesn't integrate to the other piece of your business, you have great difficulty seeing the whole picture of the customer. Everybody with me on this? And the last one I want to just talk about is the technology piece. I've already alluded to this. Technology, Zoho's a fine product. There's lots of fine products. That's not the game we're playing. The game we're playing is delighted customers. The game we're playing are processes that make sense that you're going to buy into inside your company, your customers are going to buy into, and you're going to please your customers. You're going to delight them. Your job on the technology front, particularly all the hands who went up for business earlier on, is simply to stay in the know. And let me tell you, I got 32 years. I knew every CRM vendor personally and in great depth 32 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It's impossible today to keep up with all the technology. Take it off your plate. It's not something you can absolutely master. I do it for a living. I can't master it. I promise you, if you don't do it for a living, you're not going to master it. So just be in the know. Being in the know means attend these types of events. Go to conferences. Talk with people. But don't think you're going to master it. That would just be an observation. So the challenge is, of course, how do I stay in the know? Talk to each other during coffee. Let me close with a couple of comments. I humbly submit there is a recipe for achieving a delighted customer that wants to thrive in the digital deluge, as do you. I think it consists of 3 components. There's the strategic component, the big picture that I have to think out. That's typically a roadmap that goes out 10 years, something like that, 5 to 10 years. We do it for all of our customers. Once we have the strategic roadmap in place, then we can begin to look at tactical steps inside the closed loop CRM as to what channels we should be using and how are we doing our data, structured data, and is our profile sound, and are we contextually relevant, et cetera, et cetera. But don't be foolish. We all are pragmatic people. We all have our battle scars. This stuff isn't easy. Prepare for the people, process, technology challenges. Get that technology right. That would be my observation. I'd like to summarize a couple of observations. More data, more technology, more complexity than ever before, and it ain't going away. So now we have to really think about how do we connect data across technologies, across channels, across devices, to delight our customers? Are you a Borders? Are you an Illy? Do you want to be an Amazon, or are you a Coke? And that's a personal decision that each company has to take as they think about this from a strategic perspective. I think it's important that you get the big picture right. I think you should do some type of an assessment inside your company. Where are we? Create that multi-year roadmap. I think you have to be pragmatic and prioritize the roadmap on areas that you can bite off. How do you bite off an elephant? In small pieces. You can bite them off in pieces that work for your company, in pieces that culturally fit within your company. And I just remind you again and again, don't forget the people, process, technology mix. This is not a technology game.